All right. So I know it's a little bit on the controversial side as far as trying to do the welding that I need to do on this on the machine, but all I'm planning on doing is just tack welding the piece on here, and I'll be throwing, welding blankets over top of the lathe, tucking stuff up around this as need be to protect the rack underneath here. This this lead screw is already so worn anyways. A little bit of spatter wouldn't hurt it, but even at that, I'm still planning on putting, welding sleeves on it or something to protect it. Plus, I'm going to have this piece of aluminum on that to protect it as well. Looks like I'm going to have to maybe consider cutting it down a little bit, but we'll see. But the one of the two big advantages this is going to give me is, for one, I already will have a welding jig situated. For two, this is going to allow me to get my depth of this key set correctly right off the bat. So I can measure till I'm blue in the face, but I keep missing measurements. With this setup, I won't miss the measurement. So I won't need to put this back in the Hindi and turn down the inside of the key to fit this shaft here. So I'm going to, since I've got this slid on there real quick, I'm going to get a real quick measurement on the depth of this thing and see what I need to cut out of this piece of steel. One of the other things that I realized is since this already has a rounded edge here, I'm going to try and use that to my advantage. I'm going to basically cut my pieces out like right here so that part of the rounded edge will already exist as far as running back and forth through this keyway. So hopefully that'll help limit wear in the future on this. And then I'll, when I cut off the backside, I'll round it off as well. But let me get a quick measurement as for the depth on this, and then we'll see. And then I'll pause the camera for a little while and get the lathe covered up and start cutting out the pieces of material that I need for this. But let's see what I can get here. If I can get in there. There we go. All right, so that gives me 0.184 of depth. So that's what I'm going to approximately try to make, or that's the approximate pieces that I'm going to try and cut out of this piece of angle iron. So anyways, that's a good place for me to hit the pause button. I'm going to go ahead and cut these pieces out, get this all covered up, and then I'll bring you guys back when I'm ready to start tack welding this and moving on from there. All right. So I'm going to get you guys off of the stand here in a second and show you just how I've got the lathe covered up. I came up with something kind of clever to help me out a little bit, but just wanted to show you this real quick. I've got these things cut to a pretty darn precise thickness, I think. Both ends are a little bit different than one another, so I just have to get the right one and the right end. But here's my two little keys. So let me get this slid on here real quick. bring you up here and show you something. Alright, so we've got the welding blanket, a welding sleeve or a hot sleeve, whatever you want to call it. This is the finger of a welding glove. So I'm going to get this slid down to the right depth. Something about like that. And slide that sleeve right up there like that. And then I'm going to put the end support back on temporarily and have at it. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this again and get the last few little preparations made. Okay, I still have a couple more little things to assemble, but I just wanted to kind of show you guys the keys now that they're temporarily installed before I start welding. So I think they're cut to a really good depth. Should give me plenty of meat to weld onto the worm gear, and then I'll get this on there and get the end on, and I'll bring you guys back when I get ready to start welding. Okay, I've got this thing all set up to weld this side. I don't know if it'll show in the on the camera or not, but I had to add a radiator hose clamp around this piece of slid aluminum so that I could get someplace decent to attach the ground clamp. So anyways, I'm really happy with the way it's set up. I mean, I wouldn't call it airtight, but I think it's pretty well spatter tight. So I'm going to fire up the welder, get my gloves on, and give this a couple of tack welds. And I don't know how badly the camera will flare when I start welding, but it's only going to be a few seconds here and a few seconds there. So heck, for that matter, I may very well have my head right and smack in the way. So okay, I'll call that side tack welded. I'm going to loosen up the aluminum shield and slide it that way a little bit. And then I'm going to do this back side. Right there, I've got the back exposed. Make sure that my key is pushed in all the way. Get my ground clamp back on. Now the only other thing I've got to be careful about here is I don't want to accidentally bump up against the cast iron in support there, but I should be okay. Alright, a couple of tacks on the back. Alright. Pop this thing back out of here and I'll show you guys the results. Ugh. Hate the fumes. Love the results, hate the fumes. little bit warm. Okay. Now I'm going to take it over to the bench vise and finish welding it up. Basically, I'm just going to do this with a series of tack welds because I want to try and keep the heat down as much as possible to not distort or warp this part too much. But I'd say this is going to turn out real well. Once I get done welding it, I'll chuck it back up in the Hindi and I'll turn down all this weld stuff that I've got on here. All the excess welding. And I would say that there's no damage that I can see on the lead screw. I think that is a success. If the camera would focus better. Just a little discoloration here from the heat of the welding. So, okay. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and pause the camera, and I'll bring you back when I'm done actually welding and when I've got it chucked up in the Hindi for the next phase of this. Okay, let me pull this thing out real quick. I just got done getting the Hindi set up for this thing. Fairly cool now, so I'll kind of give you guys an up-close look of it before I start trying to clean it up. So like I said, just basically about 6 tack welds on each side. And looks like I pretty well kept the spatter out of the bore of this thing. Oh, and just for the heck of it, let me see if I can, that's in the way. Let's do this. So, that I would call a win. Fits like a glove on there. So, anyways, back to the Hindi. And we'll see if I can get the outside of this cleaned up here. Okay, that should work. All right, let's see what happens. And we all know how well carbide likes interrupted cuts, but basically that's the only thing I've got that's going to make it through the weld. So keep going at it, it's knocking it down. getting fairly close there. And it sounds like it's getting more than the weld now, so take this pass and see how it looks. I want to dial in just a little bit more. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pause the camera for a little bit, and I'm going to flip this over and do the other side. I might go ahead and hit this with a file yet. I'm not sure, but I'll bring you guys back when I get the other side cleaned up and show you the whole piece. Okay, it's definitely not the most beautiful welding ever, but this is going to be covered yet with a bushing. So I think this should be okay to go. I don't imagine that this is going to take massive stresses, so hopefully, you know, everything will be kind of in shear stress through here, so hopefully the weld should just be there for good measure for the most part, just to hold the thin pieces of steel in place. So anyways, this will conclude, I think this is part 3 now. This will conclude part 3. The next thing will be for me to start sorting out the outer diameter and the length of the bushings that I need to make for this. So I'm going to have to get the apron out and get the end caps for this situated and kind of, you know, start doing some math and sorting out final dimensions, what I need to go for. But anyways, I'll get to that on another evening, so I'll catch up with you guys later.